The advent of the remake swarm meant it was only a matter of time before we started seeing remakes of critically acclaimed games. Back in 2013, I actually missed The Last of Us on PlayStation 3, and it wasn't until the following year when I got my PlayStation 4 that I was actually able to get my hands on the remastered version of that game. That first playthrough was one of the greatest gaming experiences I ever had. And even after all the zombie overload of the era, Naughty Dog still somehow found a way to make the most generic genre of survival feel fresh, grounded, and revolutionary. So for me, this fancy, built from the ground up redo of one of my all-time favorite games was a no-brainer. But for others, I can see how you may look at the Demon's Souls remake or the Final Fantasy VII remake and ask, why should I pay $70 for this? And I get that, I really do. This is a 9-year-old game with no story changes and little in the way of significant gameplay alterations. So now I gotta ask you, have you ever bought a 4K remastered of an older movie? Because this is just that, but with like a full world to explore along the story and not just a locked 2 hours of movie. Look, I won't get into the merits of this game yet, but that's because I first need to bring in someone who has experienced every single possible version of this game and platinumed them all. What was your first experience with The Last of Us like?
Wow. Yeah, my first run of this game, so it came out in 2013. I think I got it the week after it came out. And so that was, I guess, the summer. Yeah, it was the summer. So I had a ton of free time. And so I dove all the way in. And I was so excited because I was such a big Naughty Dog fan. And, because at that time, you're coming off of Uncharted 2, you're coming off of Uncharted 3, which are these really, I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. They felt like revolutionary experiences at the time. They felt groundbreaking, the things that they accomplished in those games. And so the bar was set so high, and you knew it was going to be, all the marketing was how grounded it was. It kind of became a gag almost. It's almost like an inside joke. But so you knew you weren't going to be jumping from rooftop to rooftop. You weren't going to be doing anything like, crazy. You weren't playing Indiana Jones, the game. You were going to be playing as, a 50-year-old man just kind of improvising. I mean, it starts with a bang, right? The first 20 minutes or so, the prologue, really is a tone setter. You get some really high bar in terms of, it starts off, you like these characters so much immediately. The very first conversation, Joel walks in the door, his daughter's sitting there, and there's just immediately so much chemistry and charm. Those characters and their lines and the way it's performed, like everything immediately just feels like home right off the bat. And then it very quickly descends into chaos. And in a lot of ways, that's what the game is about. It is such a great balance between like levity and these just moments of complete chaos and devastation, right? But yeah, and it really pulls no punches. You have the intro sequence, and it gives you a minute to collect yourself through the intro credits sequence, and then you're immediately 20 years later. So you have this framework, and that's all gone, and now we're just in it. And now that you've wiped away the tears, now that you've pulled yourself back together, you're figuring out what this world is, and you kind of understand where Joel is coming from, and you get that, like, oh, okay, this is not going to be a typical AAA action experience. I'm not going to be running around with my fully automatic weapons, just chucking grenades everywhere, and just my rah comrades and everything. It's going to be very character driven. It's going to be very subdued. It's going to focus on these people that are believable in a way that hadn't really been done up to that point. The experience of playing this game for the first time, it really, even in the moment, it felt like a watershed moment, because I don't know that any game had ever been so emotionally resonant and so narratively compelling by getting you to buy into characters and being that well written too.
Yeah.
The script is incredible. There's just such a level of craft to it that I think really shaped a lot of what was to come. And I think you felt, and a lot of times it's hard to know when something is a masterpiece, until it's been kind of studied and
like Spider-Man
return 3. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah. And when you return to something, when it's had time to age, kind of like how so many films throughout the 20th century, on impact, they weren't really understood, and now there's some real standard bearers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because of the relative youth of gaming as an industry and as a medium, but that was just one of those moments where there were so many moments, so many small moments in the game, and then when you saw the end credits, you just kind of knew that you had completed something special, and you were you would experience something that you would probably never experience something like it again.
Yeah, exactly. And I was kind of the same way. You're actually the one that introduced me to The Last of Us.
I was, yeah. I think I got it for your birthday or something.
Yes, you got it for me, and I didn't even get a chance to play it on the PS3. I played it on when they released the remaster a year later on the PS4. Was my first time playing through it, so I already hadn't played the original technically.
Yeah, and I played it. On Impact, and then I bought it again.
Yeah, and then we bought it again.
Yeah,
and it's that first I was already heavily involved in gaming a lot, but I limited funds meant that I didn't play as many games as I do now. Though I still have limited funds, I just care less. It was a game that, like you said, it felt groundbreaking at the time. And I think the most groundbreaking thing about it wasn't necessarily just the story or the characters, but characters in a narrative so compelling that it convinced people who would otherwise avoid a horror-themed genre to play this game. Even though it has the hallmarks of a Naughty Dog action game, it still is set in a world similar to that of like Resident Evil, with creepy crawlies around the corner, you're stealthing around, crouch walking. The fact that it got so many people out of their comfort zone and into the realm of horror based on the glowing recommendations of their peers, from how well written the characters were, how good and well paced the story was, and how just engaging the entire thing was, and how there was nothing else like it, I think is like a testament to just how much effort and, like you said, craftsmanship went into the game. And all that's to say that the original, the remaster are both incredible pieces of work. But returning to this world, not even a full 10 years later, in 4K, with some of the absolute best talent behind the industry, bringing this amazing feature to life again, was unlike any remaster or remake I've played in recent memory.
Yeah, there are a lot of great kind of remakes, remasters, the vague redo that no one knows how to, even the people making it don't necessarily know how to label.
Just to be clear, a remaster is using the old components, but up-res or slightly textured differently. Remakes are built from the ground up within a new engine with all new pieces. So this is a remake because it's built from the ground up. They use only the base data of the game's motion capture and dialogue.
Yeah. and added so much more. So
world
many
building is
they took
insane.
they took all the old motion capture and added more into that, which is all the facial expressions are just wonderful.
Yeah, like those opening scenes, like we talked about that first 20 minutes, the look on Joel's face during when he realizes the guy's gonna shoot, the look on Sarah's face as she starts to fade. It's all so much more believable. And then much later in the game, there's a couple of scenes with David where it's just you can feel the pain in Ellie's eyes way more. There's clear PTSD behind her eyes after that point and stuff. Little details like that. There's just so much believability. And having recently finished this new version of the game, because this video will be out a month after the game came out, so go up October 2nd. Hi everyone on October 2nd.
Hi future everyone. This is us from
future everyone, but it's also now. The final scene, you can feel the conflict in Joel's face so much more. Like it didn't feel like he was in the original. I remember him being so stern faced and not really struggling with his choice at the end. It was more like, I've already decided this is what I'm doing. But you can see he's glancing around for other options. Another thing, he gets called out in that moment, and he clearly goes from sadness to realization of they're right, and goes into more of like an angry state, and back to sadness, and then disbelief, and then just I'm doing this. That's too late. And those details just make everything hit so much harder. I think it was like almost replaying the game for the first time, or as close as I can get to without a brain wipe.
I wouldn't mind that.
I mean, yeah, I'd definitely brain wipe my mind and lose my memories of my children.
I mean, there's pictures. You get those back.
I'll figure it out.
You'll get
together.
You'll get clued in.
We'll get someone else can just tell me. I'll record a video of me trying to remember everything about my kids, and then play it back for me, and that'll be impossible to understand because I'm awful at explaining things.
Just write a letter.
I'll just minority report my brain about my kids.
Exactly. Just download it.
One likes peanut butter and jelly. What does that mean?
What are these things?
But it was like experiencing it for the first time, and I think part of that is because every environment felt complete. There were environments that I didn't recognize at first until I went and looked in the collectibles section in the unlockable gallery, where you can see the 2013 concept art versus the 2022 concept art. And oh my god, yeah, it's all the same locations, but they felt completely different. I think like coming out of the bus tunnels towards the end of towards the midpoint of the game, and climbing up into this highly forested, overrun, vegetative like city street with cars that are covered in vines and a tree growing up through the center of a bus, all this like super cool detail. And I was like, I've never seen this place before. Where am I?
Yeah, it's such an interesting experience. Even in that, just in the bit we streamed, there was the one building when you're coming back into the city from exiting the quarantine zone. That one, but we walked in and we were like, "What? This is the same place, but it's like a FedEx now."
Yeah,
and
there's an actual post office.
Yeah, and so instead of these kind of nondescript areas that you're kind of going through, they just breathed more life into this, and you really, I mean, you feel what you've lost.
There's definitely the world
for you.
The world felt lived in prior to the events of the game, and I think that's part of what these remakes can do. I don't want to get into the controversy of the remake stuff, but I do want to say that while I don't think that this remake was necessarily necessary, I do think that it is a cool way for a new vision of the game to come out, and one that more accurately represents what that world's like. Because obviously they were limited by the tech of the time a little bit. They were limited by time constraints, and while they're not working on another Last of Us project aside from the multiplayer right now, why not go back and do a complete remake of the game that made that series what it is. Shouldn't have been $70, but
Yeah, we can debate.
Yeah.
We can have some debates on that.
And that the pricing model across the board could be debated, but but the point is that I think that graphically this game is one of the best looking games of the year. I don't think that's anyone's in doubt about that.
Oh, every time Naughty Dog puts out anything, it really doesn't.
How do
matter.
I nominate
contention.
Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker again for character of the year? I don't think this will qualify because it's a remake, but maybe it should. I don't know. The performances are that good. I would absolutely recommend that they be nominated again for best performance.
Yeah, if we're gonna get into that, then
also
it's
Tess, the actress. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, ma'am.
I believe I don't know how you say her. I believe her name is like Annie Wershing.
Yeah. I think so.
I may have destroyed that last name.
Well, I'll put the pronunciation underneath our video, and people can say it for themselves out loud. But she didn't really get a chance to shine in the first game, not because she didn't do a good job or something like that, but because her character model didn't have any of the expressiveness that her character model had in this game. Her and what's his name? Sam's older brother.
Oh, Henry.
Henry, yeah. Her and Henry got the biggest glow ups out of everyone. They look like completely different people than the original games because they actually captured the actress and the actor's face enough to be able to convey emotion. Sure, I could tell Tess was upset, but she just looked kind of pissed off the whole game in the first one, and that to a certain degree she was. But there was this way more subtlety to her facial expressions, especially when you get to the end of her part of the journey. You can see this hope and desperation all at the same time, this kind of look of fear and anguish, but also she's trying to reassure Joel and push forward, and she knows what's coming next, but it's not much she can do about it now. And you can feel all that just in her eyes alone. And it's so nice to see minor characters, not that Tess is necessarily a minor character, but non-main characters given a full-scale remake treatment, because I feel like it's the go-to for these kinds of remakes and remasters to be like, look at how high res Joel is now. Don't look at the other character models. We spent all of the money on Joel.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk. These other guys don't matter, but look at Joel. He's so high res now.
Background Ronald, nah.
He's still
the optional conversation. Joey, forget about it.
Optional conversation. Joey's in 480p. I'm sorry, I had to conserve all the resources for Joel's upper lip.
Yeah, he's a 2007 YouTube video, but look at Joel.
It's just a JPEG that we just moved around a little bit. But I think that so for me, graphically, you can't go better than what they did here.
I agree, and I think I already said this, but every time Naughty Dog puts out anything, they raise the bar.
Yeah.
From a technical perspective, from a craft perspective.
No matter your opinion on part 2, that game leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else.
And I'm as conflicted about part 2 as anyone else, but you cannot look at that game on a mechanical, technical design level. I mean, audio, visual, every piece of it. If you told me a game could look like that even 10 years ago, I don't know if I would have believed you.
Yeah.
But because they have that reputation, it's so easy to sing their praises on it. Mm-hmm. And it's no different here. There's all of these. The Last of Us, full disclosure, is my favorite game. I don't know if it's the best game ever made. It is my favorite. And it has, as such, it has some of my favorite cinematics ever, like multiple. Yeah. And seeing those brought to life again with, again, all the facial detail, all the life that breathes back into it, because there's so many intense conversations and moments of real revelation and real like agony and joy, and getting all of those emotions coming through. It's like you were talking about with Tess. They obviously they drastically changed her character model, which is neither here nor there, but they did that and added in all this detail, and she makes more sense to me now.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't look 30 years younger than Joel, for one.
Yeah, and I think you can, because when I played the first game, I thought she was probably 10 to 15 years younger than Joel, and now it's clear to me that she isn't. But and I think that makes their connection feel more believable. It makes their connection more palpable, and kind of the on again, off again, kind of vague nature of their relationship that doesn't completely get explored. All of that feels more real, and that Tess's kind of final moment where they're in the courthouse, and and that scene is phenomenal. It's one of my favorites too. She's Joel's saying, how far are we going to take this? And it's like, as far as it needs to go. And he has the "it's over, Tess," and that's, again, performances. I can gush about all of that, but all those details coming out, and like you said, Henry too. I think Henry is one of the most unsung characters. I think all these minor characters are I think they're properly rated, but still like unsung, and carry so much of the emotional impact and themes that we're going for here. And beyond just what it accomplishes as a game, as as an interactive experience, as telling a story, it is so wonderful that it also carries these themes that are really resonant. And especially if you're a parent, or if you are younger, or
that's the other thing. I wasn't a parent whenever I played the first time, but now as a dad, I was already crying whenever we get to that first scene. But there's multiple scenes in here where I'm just like, I feel that, bro.
Yeah, and there's, I think, and just everything they brought to it. There's Tess represents something, and Bill represents something, and Henry and Sam represents something. And now that they are, physically kind of rounded out in the ways that we've already talked about, it makes those things so much more impactful. It makes their biggest moments, gargantuan.
Yeah.
The cutscene in the middle of the game, where you're on the sniper, and you're like the only on rails section of the game. You're on the big sniper, and you're defending Henry and Sam and Ellie in that neighborhood. And that long cutscene where Henry's talking about, like, I've ridden this motorcycle in my dreams, and all these little moments that feel really good. And then obviously that one very quickly turns, but the facial capture fully implemented and fully realized here just creates something so even more, like, so much more special than it even felt to me at the time.
Yeah. I think that there's so much detail added in and nuance added into not just the visuals here, but also they didn't really mess with the gameplay, but they did. There's some subtle things that they picked up from The Last of Us Part 2 that I'm happy they brought in. There's a few things I was hoping that they would bring, but they didn't. I wish I could have gone prone and crawled underneath things. That would have been cool, but
you would love a dodge button.
You would love a dodge button. You'd love the kind of combo system that they had going on with the chaining together attacks. But I'm good with the original gameplay. I'm okay with it. But even just like the small things, like Joel actually reaching out to grab things and properly grabbing them, putting the collectibles actually into the environment so that when Joel interacts with them and you look at them, they're still there. It doesn't pop up as like a floating midair collectible. He's holding it in his hand. If it's coming off a wet surface or heat came out of water, you can see the water kind of dripping onto the pages a little bit. If you go into the water with your bag and come out and pull out your collectibles, they're all wet and soaking and stuff. It's just subtle details that make all that stuff live in that world. That just makes the gameplay feel that much more smooth.
Right. And the, like, you know, just kind of add on to what you're talking about. One of my favorite little details from The Last of Us Part 2 is when you're at a crafting bench, and, you know, you have your weapon and say you're going to, you know, and you're going to tinker with something, and, you know, like, instead of just, you know, getting the load up sound and then it's done, you know, you spend your resources, and then, you know, Ellie like removes the slide and wipes something down, and you know, makes actual alterations. And
some of it feels like it wouldn't improve the thing that it's improving on, which I think is funny. But I like, you know,
just you remove the slide, wipe something down,
and then put the slide exactly the way it was, and now you've got a 25% increased damage bonus. Like it
was just dirty.
My favorite one is
which you need to do, but that did that much
on the shotgun. One of the things you can do like early on is it's like, increase the fire rate. So then he just like pulls out like a napkin or something and like wipes down the end of the gun, and it just goes, yeah, that'll do. And puts it down. I'm just like, and now it fires faster. I'm so confused.
Yeah, just kind of bang the stock on the table a couple times.
But you know, it's nice to have any kind of animation to go with those things, because I feel like, I mean, at the time it was the same kind of thing we've been talking about. There's a lot of like underrated small details like that The Last of Us Part 2 and really just PlayStation exclusives in general have started doing this. But the real-time transitions between, you know, like what would normally have been a pre-rendered cutscene and is now all rendered in engine, so there's not really a transitionary period other than that the gameplay is taking out of your hands for a second. Like if you go back, and I'll probably put the video in right here, where if you look at the old cutscenes, there's a fade to black before you come back and you're in the gameplay. There are none of those except for in a few key instances here and there. In part 1, you've got all these, this part where Sam and Henry and Ellie and Joel are in a building, and there's guys coming down the hall, and they're like, oh, we gotta make our way out of here. And then it instantly just camera shifts over to them. Now you're in gameplay. There is no pause or anything like that. Subtle things that keep the narrative going without having to make a pause. I don't feel like I can walk away from the game during a cutscene. Not that I'd want to, but it makes me stay engaged with what's happening. And I think God of War really, and a little bit Uncharted 4, but mostly God of War put that kind of thing into our hands a lot better. It felt like an innovative narrative practice. Now we're going to see it all over the place. And The Last of Us brilliantly puts it in the right places to make it feel more real. Like you're seeing their response, and now it's time for you to respond.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing, like you were saying, with how, you know, maybe this wasn't a necessary full stop remake or addition to this franchise, but there are so many quality of life enhancements in there. And that, you know, being, you know, The Last of Us, I feel like is kind of the closest thing. A lot of people kind of criticize games now and say that, oh, you know, they're going away from being fun and they're trying to be interactive films. And I think, you know, The Last of Us is one of those, is one of a few sterling examples here that really skirts that line really well.
Yeah.
Because it is so interested in having a good script and being well written and well paced and well composed, visually and performed well, of course. But all of that, because it's executed so well, and you can criticize other things for maybe not doing it as well, but because of that, you get this immersion here, and you get, and like you get pulled directly out of a cutscene into just controlling something. Mm-hmm. If if there's a scene where you're just, you're walking into something, and then the camera just flips back around and you're already moving. That's something where you're like, oh yeah, like this is what's happening. I'm doing this now.
Right.
It's those moments just help the immersion, and couldn't have happened in 2013. And so I think that is part of the case for this. It is to make it.
It's a more seamless product,
right? To fully realize what this game could be and can be, and now is.
Yeah, it's like, if at the time they could have made it so that it was seamless transition, they could have made it so you had full animations for everything, grabbing things. You can see Joel like kind of falters a little bit right before he jumps off a larger thing that's going to hurt him. He does a lot of subtle things. He still mostly just flex tapes his arm, but for the most part, like there's a lot of intricate detail put into the way that he does things. And I think even like the way reloads are done is slightly different. Like he actually checks, as he's loading in, make sure everything goes in, and then he looks in and then finishes the reload. There's a lot of like very subtle changes. I like actually seeing him build the secondary holsters and stuff.
Yeah,
because he actually like you'll see him like sit there and be like cut a hole and then sew it up, and then he'll be like, all right, now there's a second hole. I'm like, well, I wondered how you just magically made another holster, because before he just pulled his backpack in front of him and leaned forward, and then it happened underneath his shoulder where you couldn't see, and then he just pulls it back, and now there's an extra holster there, and you're just like, where did the extra materials come from?
Yeah, it's like you just turned all those nuts and bolts into leather.
Yeah, which is still funny because it's that same thing. He's just carrying around like a big, I guess, like brown paper bag sack of random scrap parts he finds. He's like, and now I'm gonna make a leather holster for this.
Yeah, he just has a tote bag full of old T-shirts but
that's the gamification of the lore there. But I also like the idea that Joel's a strong enough man to turn anything. He's an alchemist, so he'll turn metal into leather if he wants to.
That's right. Yeah, it's
equivalent exchange.
Yeah, those animations are great. Instead of having your rifle's just sitting on a bench, and then you just get these noises, and then all just like, that'll do nicely, and then you just throw it back over your shoulder and it has a scope on it. It's like now there's an animation where he actually puts a mount on and then mounts the scope. And
my favorite one is when to increase the draw speed of your bow, he'll actually de-string the bow and pull out another string and stretch it out, and then kind of like properly measure it up, and you'll see him tighten it up with the screwdriver and stuff. And you're like, it's really cool. Okay, so it actually shows, because like we talked about in the stream, Joel's a DIY guy all the way. He's out here building everything and flex sealing anything within a 5-mile radius.
He's got the sponsorship.
Yeah, you better believe it. And so I think it's nice to see that kind of handyman side of things. We're running a little long here, so we're gonna have to wrap up the main thing. But I think for me, this game is special from the start.
Oh, absolutely.
If you haven't played it, this is the way to play it. And I know that means that you have to find a PS5, and I'm sorry that that's what that means.
Yeah, that's a tough deal.
Wait till it comes to PC later this year.
That too.
It is coming to PC, so it doesn't necessarily mean that. You just need a very high-end PC with a good screen to play it, which is more expensive than the PS5, but at least there's two options for expensive things now. Yeah,
one of those things you can actually do. The other, you can get on a wait list to get on a wait list.
Yeah.
But
it's, for me, this game was a 10 out of 10 the first time around, and for 10 years later, I didn't feel that the narrative was dated or time-stamped at the time of its appearance. I didn't feel that the performances were now one note compared to what they were, especially when you look at Joel versus other, straight white grizzled man protagonists from that era. He's way more than just a one note, I'm pissed off all the time kind of guy. Well, I mean, that's how he starts off from the very beginning of the game. He's like that, but you actually feel him grow into his humanity again and discover being a person, and then discover being a father figure again, which reinvigorates his whole reason for living, which completely informs his decisions in the end of the game. And to, not to tread into spoiler territory territory for either of these games, but
yeah, I guess because it's recently fresh.
It's a brand new.
It was dug back up and
it's a brand new 10-year-old game. I think that playing through part 1 made me recontextualize and feel better about. Not even necessarily feel better, but it makes me like part 2 even more because. And I feel like a few of the YouTubers that I watch are probably touched on this. I just can't remember who. But part 2 is a mirror of part 1 in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And Ellie's journey ending the way that it does in part 2 is an exact mirror of part 1. Going through all the strife and struggle to get to a point and then just change your mind completely is an exact mirror of this game. And I kind of love the rhyme. And Andrew, insert the clip of George Lucas saying it's like poetry. It rhymes. And
you need that reminder.
I need that. And so, it does rhyme in a weird way. And so, I think this completes the set in a better way than the original and part 2 did in a way, because seeing it with all the nuanced detail to the emotions and stuff, feeling the conflicts where the conflicts didn't feel as high originally makes them stand out even more as one whole narrative. This is an easy 10 out of 10. If you haven't played it, you must play it. If you did play it, wait till it goes on discount and play it again. Or get it when it comes to PC. I don't care how you play it, just play it. It's easy 10 out of 10. Still a masterpiece in my mind.
This game is, I mean, like you keep running out of superlatives at a certain point. Like I said, it is my favorite game. I'm not going to sit here and argue with that it's maybe the best gameplay experience you will ever have. I do think what makes it special is that it is probably the most well-executed story in a game. It is for sure the most well-executed characters in a game. Mm-hmm. And because I walk away from this game knowing, I feel like I know every character. I feel like I know what every character is about. I feel like I know what Tess is about. I feel like I know what Bill is about, even though he's only there for, maybe an hour. I feel like I know that he is there to embody like the fear of caring about someone and losing them. And that arc is very, very small. It's for certainly there, but it is kind of small. And that's also one of those moments where, like you were saying, Joel, I always kind of in my head compare it to BioShock Infinite, which was also Troy Baker, which was also 2013, because that was just his coming out party. But, not that Booker DeWitt, and not to derail this conversation too much, not that Booker DeWitt is like a bad character, but he's certainly like I've done bad things.
You wouldn't understand, kid. Look at my pinky or whatever.
Yeah, he's just kind of like, I've done bad things in my past and I'm just trying to atone. He's certainly that character. And I think, it kind of comes with the action territory. It comes with kind of the horror action territory. But there's all of these characters. I guess what I'm getting at, not to just name drop every character here, they're all so lived in and they're all so easy to understand. And that is such a feat in its way. And like I said at the top, this felt like a watershed moment in games. And I kind of don't want to branch off too far. But, there are these watershed moments in games. And, like, this was kind of the first game where we saw that if you take the correct amount of care in crafting a character, then that just elevates your story so much more. That makes this mean so much more. And you really do see The Last of Us influence ever since. I was going to say for the rest of the decade, ever since. Every character-driven, every game that wants you to care about a character went to Last of Us University.
Yeah, seriously.
And, everything went and saw like, oh, Like it raised the bar, and everyone knew it. Yeah. Everyone knew on impact that this is the new standard for what you have to do if you want a player, an audience to care about characters in a video game. Because, in my opinion, the story is good. Like, I think the story is good. I don't know. I'm not going to say I don't know if it's the best story ever in a game, but it follows kind of a formula, right? It's kind of the Children of Man, Logan even formula. Logan's after, but it's just kind of the formula where man is broken down by the world.
It's the Mandalorian. It's up. It's Logan. It's
broken down by the world.
Mandy.
Gives up on finding something to care about because it's only going to hurt in the end. And then you overcome that.
I'll kill anyone. I hate these kids. And I guess this kid's all right. I'll do anything to kill these people that are trying to take my kid. He's my kid now. That's every one of these kinds of stories.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's
like it's a tried and true formula.
Yeah,
but it is just what makes it so remarkable. It truly is that Naughty Dog cared so much about kind of the intangibles, because everyone that has eyes knew that game looked amazing in 2013. It looks even better now. Everyone that has ears knew the soundtrack was great, knew the sound design was great, knew that the audio for the Infected was really unique and creepy.
To the point where it's now, we just talked about seeing The Last of Us show trailer, and they played the clicker noise, and I was like, oh, I'm excited because it's iconic now. It's an iconic sound that when you hear, you're just like,
yeah. And again, in that trailer too, they used that country song "Alone and Forsaken."
Yeah,
that's in the oh, he ain't even hurt cutscene.
Yeah,
and you know what I'm talking about if you've played it, because it's pretty unforgettable.
He ain't even hurt.
He ain't even hurt.
Floor it.
Yeah, and
that ain't even real Tommy.
And so all of those, everyone that has everyone that has the capability of sight and sound knew that they achieved.
In this game, even if you don't have the capability of sight or sound, there is actually a way to play the game because of the wonderful wealth of accessibility options.
Yeah, so, it's a great segue into that.
Yeah.
They crushed it with The Last of Us 2's accessibility options. You can you can drain the color out of everything to just see your allies and your enemies color coded. It shows everything you can pick up if you're a hoarder, or if you can't, if you have problems making determining differences in things.
If you walked through this game and you didn't open every possible drawer, door, tiny little crevice that possibly could open, locker, whatever, you weren't playing the game right. I'm sorry. Go back and try again. You got to open all the stuff.
Yeah, and you spend 30 minutes looking at every accessibility option. Your mind will be blown. There are things in there there are 20 accessibility options that you never even considered would do anything or would mean anything to someone.
But obviously we don't need the accessibility options because neither of us have any disabilities. But I think that giving that option to more and more people to get to experience this narrative, just like I feel like the complaints coming from people about the necessity of this are from people who this was not meant for. It's for a new audience. It is meant to celebrate it for you and I as fans,
right? If
we want to.
Right.
But ultimately, remakes and remasters, it's not for you. It's for people who haven't experienced it yet. And giving the option to come into this world with accessibility options that really allow them to participate in the narrative and fully get everything out of it that you got out of it, I am 100% here for it. So actually, it's an 11 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, we broke the scale because we're bringing everybody in this go around.
Inconceivable scores.
No child left behind this time.
It's gonna put the sound there, and that'll be our score. out of 10.
It'll be an arrival alien.
Yeah, just droning alien sounds and loose whisperings of God out of 10.
Yeah, we got 2 cracked tablets.
100% a burning bush out of 10.
Yeah.
All right. So, final thoughts on this. Worth it?
I think if you've played this game the ridiculous number of times I have, I think it's worth it. If you've played this game, a couple of times, if you played it on PS4 or you just played it on especially if you just played it on PS3 and then you skipped out on the remaster because you thought, oh, this is so early, why do I need a remaster?
Yeah.
I think it would be worth it to go back and experience it again. All of the upgrade, especially if you're just PS3 to PS5, and those are your only 2 experiences with it, I think that would be a really valuable and interesting
Make
take.
you cry.
Oh yeah, if you need a good cry, yeah, there's like 3 places at least. And it's all, mileage may vary. If you've played this game, and if you've played this game and you think, oh, this is an unnecessary addition, all the power to you. I respect that opinion. But I do think, I think The Last of Us is kind of one of those things that just warrants every drop being squeezed out of it.
Yeah, if you have a PlayStation, you should own this game. You should play it. And I'm not even saying that you should play it right now at the $70 price tag. If you want to wait for it to go on discount or wait and hope that they put it out on PlayStation Plus, be my guest. But just plan to eventually play it. Do yourself a favor.
That's all we ask. All
right. Well, that's going to do it for us this time, guys. If you like this style of discussionary review and reminiscing, let us know in the comment section below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, and for more news, reviews, and previews, subscribe to Hardwired. Catch you guys next time.